You have to go slow before you can go fast. Just because the number value on the bar didn't move doesn't mean the quality of what you're doing didn't improve. Patience is everything.
If I want to actually get better at my press, I don't need to work on my press at all. I need to work on my clean, the steps beforehand. It's building a skill, not just going into the workout.
You can read someone by how they lift. If you want to get better, you want to move forward, you have to work where you're limited. My focus, and it's just something that's trainable.
Hey, what's up, guys? Thank you for joining me and welcome to the show. It is a true blessing to be able to connect with the top minds in strength each and every week and share stories, insights, and experiences on becoming stronger in every area of our lives. And now I want to do more for you. I want to invite you to join the exclusive private Facebook group of The Strength Connection. In this group, I share the biggest takeaways and lessons from these amazing conversations, as well as training and strength tips for pursuing mastery and fulfillment in life. This group is filled with individuals looking to take full control over their strength in their lives, and it's the perfect space to explore ideas and share your journey. And you'll also get exclusive access to the Strength Connection Mastery Seminars. It's a deep dive into physical, mental, and spiritual training that you can begin using immediately. Just go to the Facebook groups, type in the Strength Connection, and you'll be accepted immediately. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll catch you on the inside. Welcome back to the show, everyone. Good to see you. Danny, it's been a blast talking with you. I was saying, we just started getting rolling right off the bat. If we didn't hit record on this, we would have just kept going for about a half hour. So thanks so much for taking the time. I really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. I'm glad to be able to have a conversation with you.
Yeah, we got connected from a mutual friend who's a great guy. Shout out to Eddie McGuire. Appreciate him kind of getting us together and introducing us. But as I said, it's been really interesting to research you and the work that you're doing with the New York Weightlifting Academy. And I always love talking with people in the weightlifting world because I personally am not in it that much. I kind of live vicariously through you guys. I've been in the kettlebell world for a while, but you guys in a coaching platform and an understanding, I think, of mastery, because we're talking about just a few movements that you need to focus on so much and build a skill set up. I think it's such a powerful lesson for life. I've got the chance before to talk with Greg Everett. I talk with Jersey Gregorick about kind of this world. So the stuff that you're doing with New York Weightlifting, I think is just phenomenal. So I'm really excited to just have a great conversation with you, man.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that very much. I'm looking forward to, just like as we started off or began off air, how it goes on air now.
Yeah.
So
exactly. Yeah. So to kick this off, always with somebody new, I always like to hear a little bit about the origin story, how you found yourself in the world of coaching. If it was something that you always kind of thought you were going to go into, or kind of how did you find yourself in this world of strength and conditioning and ultimately into developing the New York Weightlifting Academy?
Well, I guess to start off, you could say, where to begin, I could always vary, but let's just say to begin, I was kind of juxtaposed between two things. I was in grad school. I was going to be a social studies teacher, going to schools to teach high school social studies or adolescent, while at the same time, I had always weight trained throughout my life. I remember going to the weight room in high school, and then the Gold's Gym in town, would go there and just kind of do, you're essentially like powerlifting, bodybuilding movements. This was back like early 2000s, and myself, friends, we just wanted to get monstrous and be
just jacked and swole.
So I kind of always had that background. And let's just say going forward, when I was in grad school, I was training, I was doing a variety of things. I actually got into doing Brazilian jiu-jitsu. So I was doing that, and then some wrestling tournaments with it. And it was kind of going down two paths. And the way it ended up working, long story short, I figured I enjoyed weight training. I enjoyed the wrestling aspect of it in jiu-jitsu. And then somehow, I don't know how it was, I came across the Olympic lifts online. And I was like, yeah, that seems pretty cool. I want to try this. So I started just dabbling a little bit with cleans at the Gold's Gym, the iron plates and the hexagonal plates and all that. So making a bunch of noise. And I figured, with jiu-jitsu and wrestling and stuff, everything's very technique oriented. This stuff seems like just an organic thought that I had, whatever reason. So this seems very technique oriented. So let me find a coach so I could learn the technique on it. I figured it'll make me a better jiu-jitsu player. And once I found someone along the way, started teaching me the lifts, it was like, wow, this is awesome. I like this a lot. So I started training more serious towards lifting. I was still doing jiu-jitsu and lifting at the same time, and eventually ended up competing. And from there, I was at one competition in Connecticut. I met these two other guys. The only other guys there from New York. So we started talking. They were only like half hour from me. It's like, oh, okay, cool. They invited me to come train with them. So how that led to was I went and trained with them. Never looked back. Have been with those guys ever since. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, where the gym that they were training at, they were like, oh, we're looking for personal trainers. Would you like to do this? So when school was out during the summer, I started getting into personal training. And this was back in the time I went like 08, 09, 10, where there were a lot of just schools did not have a lot of vacancies and positions opening. So I just had a leave replacement, finished that finished that for the year. Summer went into training people, and then no school called back or anything like that. So ever since then, I just went full speed into training people, mm-hmm. and just here we are.
Yeah. When you were training before, you said you were lifting at Golds and everything like that. Were you getting everything kind of out of it that you were hoping for, or were you searching for something kind of new to fill some different void? And that's kind of how you found Olympic lifting.
Yeah, I think that's exactly how it came forth, because it was just at the time, especially when I was doing it for grappling and stuff, it wasn't the bodybuilding training. I was looking more, I want to do more athletic style of training, because I'm not trying to be a bodybuilder. I want to be a functional athlete that mm-hmm. this will be conducive to when I have tournaments, when I have competitions and things that'll make me better for that. Mm-hmm. And I think too, I think the environment got stale, maybe like reflecting mm-hmm. on it. I think the environment was stale for me and just got bored of it. And mm-hmm. the venturing into the Olympic lifting side, it brought me to a different gym with a little bit different style of equipment that was meant for this type of stuff. And the allure mm-hmm. of it, like I would equate it to, like I tell people in many instances, kind of like when you listen to the radio and you listen to like classic rock and pop music, but then, that's the center. But then once you start getting further out into the periphery of the more specialized musical genres or more specialized forms of training, that's like, ooh, this is interesting. It has more artistic sense, a very, very visceral type of, mm-hmm. I guess, embodiment.
Oh, that's a really interesting analogy. I never heard of that, really kind of related to music in that. That's pretty cool. It reminds me of just kind of the steps of mastery, right? It's like you get mm-hmm. that, you get your reps and you kind of build it, but then there's this creative side of it that once you get through that, then all of a sudden it's like that sweet science comes into it. And that's where it seems like Olympic lifting, that type of work, it just seems like it's just the devil's such in the details, but when you get it, it's like you feel it instantly. And it's everybody I've talked to who've, gone into that world say mm-hmm. that it's almost like this immediate addiction that you get, because you just, everything needs to line up so perfectly in order to hit that exact moment from there. Did mm-hmm. you kind of feel the same thing?
Yeah, well, actually, and this is something I tell everybody all the time. Actually, you kind of delving a little bit into before we even started, something you had mentioned that caught my ear. But like I tell going from the jiu-jitsu background and having done that for years, weightlifting, I approach weightlifting, consider weightlifting to be a martial art, because you have across the board, you have to have discipline, you have to have technique, you have to have practice, you have to have skill. And most people in this, again, I'll say this to people all the time. You walk into a jiu-jitsu school, you walk into a karate school, whatever discipline you want. Nobody expects to be a black belt within the first month, let alone the first year. Everyone understands that black belts, almost to a certain degree, it seems like somewhere you'll never get, but there's this tacit understanding of there are steps of how you get there.
Right.
Whereas weightlifting, it just seems like I want to do my maximum now. And if I'm not jumping 10 kilos per month, it just, there's no understanding, but it's the exact same. And how I'll coach too is that you have to go slow before you can go fast, because you're trying to instill habit. I mean, forgive any karate guys who know, but however you chop a 2x4 in half, you don't do that on the first day. It's through repetition of slow practice to where it becomes natural and you begin to move quicker and it becomes routine. And that's the same thing with weightlifting. You have these people that I find will come in, they'll be so wild and aggressive right from the beginning, thinking that they have to be fast, but it's like, no, you have to learn how to go slow so that way you can maximize yourself.
That's a really great analogy of it with them. I'm sorry?
No, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, no, that's
I don't know if I got off. answer of the question there, but it's that's at least how I take it and approach it. It's actually, yes. So it's such a specificity. You have to approach it in a very disciplined way, and that's something that I at least try to instill in all my lifters. Be patient; it will come. Just keep going.
I love the analogy to a martial art, from it, which is so interesting. And it is weird with fitness, with strength work. People naturally just think that you should just know this stuff. You should just be able to go in and just start getting this stuff down. I had Eric DeGotti on the podcast recently from New Jersey. Okay. And he had a great analogy of his son, like, was going into accounting. And he's like, well, when you get out of school for accounting, you don't have to deal with accounting enthusiasts who are kind of depicting everything that you're doing. It's like in the strength world, we have strength enthusiasts who enjoy it, but don't actually have the technical precision. But in a martial art, if you go and study jiu-jitsu or you study Kempo or anything like that, like, there is this natural understanding that this is a school. You're going to learn the process in order to get to a black belt. But in health and fitness, it still seems like people don't know the steps of it.
It's true. It's almost as if there's no recognition of steps. It's just like, I want this now. Why can't? Where are my results? Where is it happening? And especially in weightlifting, and let's say, and this is like where weightlifting and martial arts diverge, at least I would say to a degree, is that what makes weightlifting, and I would think what makes people look for the more immediate results in lifting is that it's quantifiable. In a martial art, you don't get the objective perspective of how you're improving. Let's say watching yourself every training session. With weightlifting, it's all numeric based upon what's on the barbell. So everyone immediately, okay, well, my number is this. It's been 3 months. I'm still at this number. Why is this number not more? It's like, okay, well, look at how you were in the beginning of the 3 months and look at where you are now. Beforehand, you're running all across the platform trying to make a lift, and you're a 40% success rate. Now you're staying in the same spot and you can make the same number 90 to 100% of the time. So it's just, just because the number value on the bar didn't move doesn't mean the quality of what you're doing didn't improve. But again, it comes down to being a numbers game.
Do you think is that just kind of an ignorance thing from people who just assume that it's just going to be so simple to get into these movements? Just because I know a lot of the things that you would see in weightlifting and posting, especially if you're just looking at things like Facebook or Instagram, you see some of the most beautiful technique from people of going in who have probably been doing this for, 10 years. And I think it's very easy to look at that, being like, oh, I want to do that. But naturally we think like, well, I want that result. I don't want that process of it. So is it just people who they don't just understand the world yet when they first come in?
And that's I think they don't have an understanding of the process. It's like, okay, I can do this. I am doing this. And also I think it comes down to a perspective of what they're actually doing. So not in the sense of like, they don't know what they're doing, but let's say, let's just take a deadlift, for example. You put 200 pounds on the bar. You know that you have to move 200 pounds. You put 300 pounds on the bar. You know you have to move 300. So the effort is going to be commensurate to what you're doing here. With lifting, you're moving weight on the bar, but you're not moving it through just pure action and intensity of your action. You're moving it through how deliberate you are through your action. So it's not a matter of, okay, it's heavier, I have to simply just put more force into it. It's again, this is something I'll tell people all the time too, is that in the value of the bar, the weights on the bar are not a test of you being able to lift the bar. It's a test of you being able to maintain the same positions and get the bar to the same spot without that weight disturbing your positions to move it. So it's a sport of positions. It's a sport of angles. So that's what you're training. It's not, let's say the effort comes into you not letting the bar do this to you, but you maintaining this position while you move the weight.
That's interesting. Yeah. Cause if you think of it like with a deadlift, like we're talking about just absolute strength. Just if it's more on the bar, just give more force to it, drive through the floor.
Exactly.
Where in Olympic lifting, it's very different because it's a deliberate action of it. So it's much more about I would assume that it's probably a lot more about teaching patience to stay within your lift and not kind of just, shooting your load too early on it.
Yeah, patience is everything. You just have to just wait, wait till the right time, wait till you feel the bar. It's just, and I mean, still, it's always, it's going to be, I'm guilty of it with my training still. It's hard to fight that, especially when you're trying to, you know what you have to do. You're trying to move around the bar and everything. And sometimes you just get a little impatient or so, but it's learning patience. And what I'll try to do is just, and really, like we were saying earlier, how my training has been prior, like pre-COVID versus now, is taking little bits away from every training session. What's the one small thing, not big things, small things that you've learned every training session that is considered progress. So it's not a matter of how big they are, not a matter of grand ideas, but the little bits add up. They collect over time.
Do you do that with your students as well? Do you have them like with a journal, like do kind of a breakdown of that, like a reflection of wins during the session at all? Or do you do that more personally for yourself?
No, I don't do that with them. I maybe verbalized. A lot of people have notebooks. They'll take notes. They'll write things down. I don't know what they write down. I will tell them to write things down that seemed that worked or were valuable for them for the session. But it's just like, let's say, so I've been probably like when I've really first started to now, I'd say probably been lifting better part of 10 years. I want to say anywhere from 10, 12 years, something like that, maybe even more, a little bit more. And I mean, I can only imagine what it's like for those who've been lifting like 20 years, but it's the perspective I've had when I started to, let's say, halfway through to where I am now. It's completely different. So like I try to get these ideas across. I try to tell them, but it's something like yes, they're aware of it, but to understand it might take more time. Like there's this one quote that was going around years ago by this, by a famed American coach, Joe Mills was his name. And he said, I could teach you everything I know about weightlifting in 10 minutes. The problem is that it's going to take you 10 years to understand everything that I've said. So, it is 100% truth, because it just, for you to really understand, it's just like, oh, so that's why going to what I said, try to take the little wins, because it's like, once you have the repetition of looking for the little things like that, they come back around. It's cyclical. And then people will be like, oh, now I get what you mean. And the amount of times people have said where it's like, yeah, now it makes sense. You've only told me that like for a year straight. It's like, well, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
that's interesting. One of my good friend and mentor, Brian Grasso, who I would call him an expert on the Tao Te Ching, by Lao Tzu. He studied it a lot. And he has that line about that book. It takes 20 minutes to read and about 20 lifetimes to understand and apply into your life. So it's kind of similar to that quote from there. It is like, because if you look, it's really only a couple of lifts, but the sweet science is inside of that, of what feels. So it's that.
And I was say there's two parts to it too, because there's a physical development and then there's the mental development, and it just both take time. It takes time for your body to adapt, to be able to do what you need it to do. It takes time for you mentally to be able to adapt. And when they finally intersect and start like really meet each other and start going along together, that's when it's like, okay, now things are starting to make sense. And let's say like where I am now for my training, it's just like, okay, I have a good feel of where I'm at, what I'm doing. And it's just like, you become much more aware, and you can be more aware because you're not trying to find and search things. It's like, okay, man, that felt bad. like I know what I did with that one, or that felt really good. Okay, let me move on from there. I achieved my goal for the day and to the next.
It's funny kind of combining that strength with the technique. Like I first really found that in kettlebell training with doing clean and presses, where it's like a single arm military press is a very absolute strength-based movement. There's some technique involved and tension, but when you get to that like real 1 rep max type feel, the better your clean is, the easier that press is going to be. And if you're clean and shitty, it's not going up. So it's like you need that technique at the beginning in order to get yourself. It's like that prerequisite to be able to do the strength work. So it's like finding that right groove of the clean. All of a sudden, wow, that press went right up. What did I do? It had nothing to do with the press and the strength of it. It actually had everything to do with the technique underneath. But it was a hard lesson to learn of just like, wow, like if I want to actually get better at my press, I don't need to work on my press at all. I need to work on my clean, the steps beforehand. And it's things like it's got very similar kind of correlation into the weightlifting world.
Absolutely. I mean, you're obviously used to clean and press for kettlebell, clean and jerk and weightlifting. The easier you make the clean, the more energy you have for the jerk.
Mhm.
So that's exactly it. It's just a matter of, I mean, as I was taught through my coach for working with people and how I would train, it's just, you have to work where you're weak, because if you're only as good as your weak spots. So like for me, for example, my jerk has always been a weak lift for me.
Mm.
And it's one of those things where some people have the jerk, some people have to work their entire career at it. So it was always been tough for me. But cleans, for whatever reason, cleans are the one lift where it just naturally came pretty well to me. So I mean, I go to compete, I could never worried about missing a clean. Never missed a clean. I could clean a house if I needed to. It's just the jerk is now the tough part. So
that's funny, because I think one of your students, Carrie Pierce, when I talked to her, I think she said the opposite. I think she said she can always jerk the weight, like that's her strength, but getting it up to that position is the tough part.
Yeah, she could have the most, like, it could take her 5 minutes to stand up from the clean. She looks like a cobra coming out of type of thing, like lose everything. But you could turn around and not watch the jerk and know it's going to be made.
Yeah.
So,
that's so interesting with working with clients, and when you start working individuals, right? Because it's like each person, I assume, probably has a much different weakness that you need to work on and really need to get out. And it's tough. I don't think none of us want to admit our weaknesses, and it's almost something you don't want to work on as much. You want to just do the strengths over and over again. But I'm sure it's finding that patience to work on those things to just make everything well-rounded.
It really is, because I mean, if you want to get better, you want to move forward, you have to work where you're limited. And like going back to Carrie with when Justin reached out to me and started working with her, it was exactly that, working her weak spots. And I think, I guess I'll toot my own horn with that, but the way it worked out with how the games were that year in the qualifier, one of her big weaknesses was the front squat. And like when Justin called me, he was like, front squat really hasn't moved. We have to, needs to go up. Her clean hasn't gone up. I mean, she doesn't need to be the best. She just needs to get it competitive. So then that way it'll keep her where she needs to be. And then I think I forget how the qualification process was then, but one of the qualifiers, it was a max front squat, and Justin came out. Justin's texting me. He's like, "Oh my God, you got to be kidding me!" But yeah, he's like, "Really, of all things?" But it just, the work that we did worked, and it did exactly that. It gave her just enough to keep her in there, and then everything else, all her strengths in the other avenues, shone through and pulled her through, and it helped. So you have to work where you're limited, otherwise you're going to get stuck.
Yeah. Well, it must be really fun working with somebody like Carrie, because she's such an elite athlete. She's got so much strength in this small frame of her body. So, but like when you get to that level of strength, like getting any more strength out of that must be super challenging on a programming standpoint. It's like getting Usain Bolt from a 9.8 to a 9.7. Like that takes a lot of effort there. So was that a challenge to you of like working with somebody like Carrie of like programming, or was it more of like, this just felt right in your wheelhouse?
Honestly, it just felt like right in my wheelhouse. And I don't know if it's just how either I view things or really what it is, because it's just like, I mean, the best part about working with Carrie, and the best part about working with anybody for that matter, is that when you have someone who wants to get better, who's willing to get better, trusts you that you can help them get better, and will put in whatever effort needed, that's the enjoyable part. So whether it's her who's at the top, or whether it's let's say one of the women that I have who trains with me now, I think she might be 60 or so. She just works her butt off, and I mean, the frame can't even hold how far. But the mental attitude and effort that they have is equivocal, and that's worth more than anything. So let's say, just going back to what you're saying about working with Carrie, is that it was in my wheelhouse in the sense of the issues that she had were not uncommon, especially amongst CrossFitters. The areas where she was weak were definitely not uncommon amongst many people, and especially amongst CrossFitters. So it was really just trying to, within the time frame that we had, work get as much results within the time frame that we had for them to be yieldable when it was necessary for them to come through.
Mhm.
So we just came up with a plan, gave her work to do, worked on things that integrated with Justin's plan on everything, and it just seemed to work just enough to get her where she was.
Yeah. It's got to be so much fun. I mean, working with somebody who's like going for a performance-based like athletic event,
Yeah.
and also at the same time, like right down the street in the next block, you have a 60-year-old woman who's, just working her butt off. But the similarities that you mentioned there is the mindset, behind it and the patient. Is that something that you found early on in your coaching career of how important this was, or has that evolved a lot as you've been in this space for the last, like 10 years or so in coaching?
I think something that I was aware of it early on, and especially for myself, because I mean, when I first started, my coach would always tell me I got to calm down, I'm a lunatic, and everything like that. Which, I mean, Mark will still say that to this day. But yeah, I mean, that has changed a lot. But it's what happened here? Where I guess my perspective of it is what's different now. So it's very valuable. You have to have a strong mindset. You have to learn how to apply that, but how to apply it correctly instead of just being like, kind of like I was saying before, just like full speed, go for it. I want more. Learn to, all right, you need that attitude, but use it a little bit differently. You got to, let's say if we're trying to shape a pot on a spinning wheel, we can't just go full throttle and try to make the finished result. We got to met it out and just going back to the patience element of it. Yes. Yeah. Know when to be really driven and know how to use that energy and let's say try to shift it into being driven for your technique work.
Right.
So
it's an interesting kind of back and forth, right? Because like everybody, we all know that mindset's a part of it. And it's yeah, absolutely. But like, what the fuck does that actually mean? A lot of times, it's like, it's objective. Yeah. Like if you're, you have the bar, it's like you add more weight to the bar. That's an objective thing. Okay. You're getting stronger. How do you actually know that you're getting a stronger mindset or you're building your patience up? I think that's always an interesting question that I love talking about with coaches of like, how do you see that in other people? Because it's a very subjective thing from one person to another. So it's like, have you worked on that yourself, like in coaching over the years of like, how do I get better at this side of the ball rather than just the technical piece?
Well, yes, I think that is part of it, part of training. And so let's say like I'll tell one of the guys who helps me with my podcast, Mr. Smith, part of essentially the premise of what we discuss is how weightlifting is a metaphor for life. And really everything that someone does or everything that you do in the weight room, especially for at least Olympic lifting, I would say, is a direct microcosmic reflection of how your entire life is, how you conduct yourself, the way you do things. And it literally, you can read someone by how they lift. So yeah, so it's one of the things where, okay, you can learn that, you can read that, and then you can use weightlifting and help you in other aspects of your life. So I think there's two parts to that. One, you do everything I just said, and people can benefit, you can grow from it, you can get better for the level where you're at. And then when you go into, let's say, the professional level, like I made the comparison between Carrie and the other woman, but let's say when it comes down to time for Carrie to actually like full go, she's elite. So her, Dmitry Klokov, all the European lifters that I'm friends with that I know when I was in Germany a few times for competitions, they're at a different level. And yes, you can hone your mindset. Yes, you can try to get better at certain things, but some things, just like athletic ability, are just inveterate. And if you either have it or you don't, because the level that those guys are at, the mindset they have, it's like, wow. So when Klokov has done seminars at the gym before, people ask, I don't know, is it worth it? Should I do it? The number one answer that I give is yes, an emphatic yes. And not just because I'm trying to fill the seminar out, but it's just, in fact, yes, not for the lifting, not for anything other than just getting to be around him and in his presence to see how he operates. Right. And just watching him is worth more than the lifting advice that he has to give. He's got 25 years of sage lifting advice, but seeing how he conducts himself mentally, he's on a different stratosphere, or in a different stratosphere.
Right. That's a when you embody it like that from certain people who do it, it's so powerful to be around that energy. And I've always thought too, like it's fun to see the elite of the elite perform at that level. But at the same time, Danny, I don't know if you'd agree with this, but it's like being in a great mindset in that moment is almost way easier, because it's like you have no other choice but to be focused in that. It's like my coach and a good friend, Fabio Zonin, is a master instructor with Strong First, talked about heavy weights. Like if you step up to a deadlift bar that's like close to your 1 rep max or above, like you have no choice but to focus in that. Like you're not thinking about anything else. However, training, when you're lifting a 50% or 60% bar, if you can keep that same focus and that same attention in that,
absolutely,
that actually builds so much more in your life of being able to practice. And it's almost like the event, the excitement of like being in a Coliseum and having people cheering, like, yeah, that's awesome. But most people don't have the chance to do that. But you can practice that mindset when you're training, right?
Well, that's why I encourage everybody to compete. I think everyone who comes in and ventures to weightlift should absolutely compete, because the first time you don't know what to expect, you don't know what's going on. All of a sudden you go out there, you have to lift in a foreign atmosphere. There's tens of people watching you. You have 3 judges staring directly at you. You're just like, you don't know, you don't hear anything. You don't know what's going on. And like with focus, and it's just something that's trainable. And I like years, my coach, Mark, would always be telling me, come on, you got to focus, you make this lift, focus. And what I thought I was focused, looking back on, I was like, I didn't know how to focus. It wasn't for a lack of effort in any which way. I thought I was rooted in the moment, but I was like, no, I definitely was not. But I had to go through that, and that got me to where now it's like, now I can focus. I know how to, almost to the point where I can turn it on when I have to turn it off, and go to where like I can joke a little bit for a moment, but then when I go on the platform and get to the bar, okay, really locked into it. And it's just again, another one of the trainable attributes that weightlifting offers that is beneficial for every other aspect of your life.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned that, of like encourage people to compete and to jump in. I think that's so huge and valuable. I just came back a couple months ago from a certification program where we had to do strength tests, and you get called up in front of your group of peers, and you have to do, it's a barbell type certification. And I haven't been in a competitive environment in a long time. And it's like, there's no first place on it, but you're stepping up in front of 25 people and you're performing a lift. The energy and the jolt that you get from doing that is something that it's hard to replicate when you're in just training.
Oh, it's impossible.
Yeah.
Even for myself, like people, like I still get nervous when I compete. I still, the trepidation, heart rate goes up. I mean, it's just, it's not something that goes away, and there's really nothing in your life that offers you that. And to have the fortitude, or even to just try it, no matter how you do, don't worry about how you do, just do it.
Right.
It goes so far. It just teaches you lessons about that you can't get really any other way.
Yeah, we when we had a studio up here, we did a tactical strength challenge, which was it's a 1 rep max deadlift, it's a pull-up test, and then it's a kettlebell snatch test. And they do it throughout the world at this time, and we just kind of threw it out there for people, like, hey, anybody want to jump into this? And one of them, we had like, I think 23 people signed up for it. And
wow,
we were telling people, it was amazing. And we worked with general population people. The people were just doing this to generally get stronger, just be better in their overall lives. But the competing with yourself and just being there and hearing the energy from it. I remember, like, me and the other coaches, we were getting texts for like 2 days from our members afterwards of just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this, the energy of it. I can't believe I did that. And we had I think 80% of people, 90% of people like hit their 1 rep PR max ever. It's like, and there's just high fives going on overall. And I don't think that you can just shy away. And like, yes, it's like great to train and be better for life and stuff, but putting yourself in that little bit of a competition and just challenging yourself does so much to bring you on. Like, it gives you that energy of that you can hold with you and go into the next training session. But it's so, I think it's so valuable that you said that. So encouraging, like you said there, I think is such an important lesson for everybody to learn, is just put yourself in a fun challenge once in a while.
Yeah, especially because over time, the more you compete, the more you do, you adapt, and that's where a lot more of your progress is, and just making more a bigger number on the bar. And probably some of the most exhilarating times that you can ever have lifting and competing are the ones where you have a good competition, where you're completely locked in. Your focus is just laser like when you're in the zone, as all the books say.
Yeah.
Like when you achieve that, it's just, you feel unstoppable, and it's a wonderful feeling. That's something too that you keep chasing, because there have been meets where I've had like that, where like the following day it's like, oh, this is great, I love it, I can't wait to lift again type of thing. You're just on top of the world. And then other meets where it just either whatever it may have been, because that's always how they go, you never know what you're going to get. Meets where I've either like so hyper present where it lost the edge and I was like half asleep, or just couldn't focus at all. And the following day hated myself, and it was like, I can't wait to train again so I could kill myself to make up for the type of deal. But it's but it all, in the grand scheme, all ties into learning how to really navigate yourself and conduct yourself. And I really think that goes for anything you're going to play. And once you, it's again, just it's a skill. Yes, you snatching and clean and jerking is not going to make you money doing it, but the skills you have and that you pick up how to snatch and clean and jerk, and to get you to do them better, those are unsaid tools that you can use towards anything.
Right. Yeah. And it's building a skill, not just going into the workout, which I think sometimes our culture, we get into just that mindset, like it's that burn and sweat type feeling where it just needs to go in, you need to push it, where no, if you approach it like you're learning a different skill and then you're seeing progress, like progress just feels so good when you're doing it, not just more weight on the bar, but when you feel that technique change. I'm sure you see it in people's faces all the time when they finally get it, and it's like, holy shit.
Sure. And that's like, let's say, I guess like a debate like myself and other friends, coaches will get into is that, and something that I say all the time, I think that so many people now are so focused on the program. This is my program. What's the program going to be? I have to do this. I have to do that. Even in Tudor Bompa's book, obviously the periodization, the whole premise of it. I forget what page it's on. One line just said however it was phrased, like the organism or the athlete may not be feeling appropriate for the day, so it's necessary to adjust the plan accordingly in order to achieve gains. So to me, it's like people like, you have to do this, you have to do that, and then they have a terrible session, missing all over the place, taking 10 attempts to make 90%. That's like, well, what are you getting out of that? You're not getting anything out of it. So that's like, everything's relative. So you want, like I said before, you want to pick, like what I'll do for myself, I'll pick what I want to achieve for the day with a rough number range that could be give or take based upon how I feel. But there's just something that I'm looking to get out of it. I want this weight to feel like that one does. And if I achieve that, I want to at least take a video or see a video if I moved how I want myself to move with this weight. Okay, achieved, good, move on. And really approach it to where you're trying to collect currency out of it, as opposed to just spending recklessly, hoping that you're going to get what you need. Right. Because from my experience too, in the end, the person who does the program to the T, just 5 days a week, just keeps going. If they have terrible days, whatever, doesn't really make that big a difference versus it doesn't do any different versus the person who is very focused and, let's say, does half the amount of volume or intensity on the training.
Right. Well, and just following it blindly like that, right? It lacks any self-awareness at all of like, because all you're doing is just following a program, where the approach, like you just said, like, I want this to feel like this, like that intuition, that skill of intuition comes in. And that's when you're like wholly part of the program. You're not just blindly following progressive overload.
Well, and that's exactly it, the self-awareness right there. There was I was reading one thing on the Soviets when they came up with their whole training plan, periods, all that stuff. But they had sports psychologists too. And one of the big things that they would teach the athletes is to learn self-regulation. And that's something, when you have just a program that I've seen people just shoot at haphazardly, no one has an idea of self-regulation. I mean, I didn't have an idea of self-regulation. I used to immolate myself practically in training, but that's self-regulation, I think, is probably the most important thing that you can have, because in order to achieve self-regulation and understand it, you have to have a good mindset. You have to have a good focus on what you're doing. And also too, it allows you to be very present with how you're trying to develop yourself. Right. But it just, that's everything. And let's say going back to Klokov, when I asked, like, when I picked him up from the airport, or when I was dropping him off, and like he said in the seminar, he was telling what his training's like. He's like, I do this, I focus on two things that he said. Everything he does by feel. He has an idea of the workouts he's going to do, but everything's by feel. And then let's say, instead of getting up to a working weight and doing 5 sets at a working weight, he'll build up to that, whatever that weight is, one time, but do it by making very small incremental jumps. And he does that because he says every single weight is a new weight. So he has to respect it as an unknown, as opposed to, okay, I did this once already. And then you lose respect for it when it's your second attempt, third attempt.
Right.
And the same thing too. We're talking about going to the sauna, because we go to a Russian bathhouse not far from here. It's like, how do you do it? And he's like, oh, everything by feel. Like I said too with that. He said, 25 years as a professional, 25 years professional athlete is like 100 years regular person.
Oh,
so,
I'm sure.
Yeah. So like, wow, man, he's just gemmed every which way, all the way to the airport.
That's so great. It's everything by feel. I think that's just the perfect line on everything there.
Mm-hmm.
It's because it's kind of you, I guess you build the skill of remaining neutral, right? It's like not every workout is good or bad. It's like, it's not like you had a shitty one or a great one. It's just, all right, I did what I needed to do, and just, this is where I was at for the day. My good friend, Antonio Scolante, who's a researcher in California, he talked about, he's translating Dr. Carmelo Bosco's book with athlete readiness, and talked all about that, of like, but then at the same time, he's like, there's a lot of data points that you can get of how ready the athlete is to do these certain things. And there's the different percentages of, if you're not recovered, how much heavier the 80% weight is going to feel. But he said it still comes down to, you have to talk to the athlete of how they feel. It's like, and they have to know for themselves of what feels best. And if you learn that skill, I think it just undoubtedly, you just bring that into everything else that you do in life. So it's really that carryover into work, into family, into self-actualization, all that type of stuff.
Yeah, and for the training aspect, like completely with everything you just said. But the competition aspect, which is why, again, I encourage everyone to compete, is because competition doesn't care how you feel.
Yes.
So that's one of the things where, because you could easily say, oh, I'm not feeling it today, and go easier. And there's nothing wrong with that. But when you're competing, and especially when you go into the clean and jerks, because you could get so fired up, just use so much energy in the snatch, and clean and jerks you come to, and you're practically half asleep. But you have to somehow find the ability to do so. That's where you don't have the choice of let's just say it's not here today. This is where you just dig down and find something else within you to be able to push through that, to where, yes, I know how I feel. How can I work around this now?
Right. That I love that. So just every once in a while, just put yourself in that challenging position. Cause you said, like, that deadline, it doesn't care what you need to do. It's like, this is the time to do it. And whether you feel great or not, just, you better jump in and just get rolling with it. That's a powerful thing, because that just, I mean, you're going to be uncomfortable. Like you said, you're still nervous going into competitions. And it's like, yeah, that's kind of part of it. Like, you should be a little bit nervous. That's actually probably going to jolt you up a little bit.
Yeah, it does. And you usually have the nervous energy is very helpful sometimes. You always have a little bit more power when when you have that nervous energy. So let's say, not the last competition I did, but probably one of my most favorite that I did. It was in October. I think was it October? September, October? I think the end of October. Doesn't matter. It was the first time I competed after like probably 2+ years, since 2019, because of COVID and everything. And it was a friend of mine's meet down in New Jersey. Like, yeah, I'll do it. Why not? So I had goals it was just kind of a huge experiment to see how my training was, like what I planned for training and how training was, to what I could actually do in the competition. And let's say, just taking the clean and jerk, for example. So I didn't, in training, I touched weights up to my second attempt, what my second attempt was going to be, once. I didn't do anything. I didn't, basically 5 kilos more, but I didn't attempt anything in snatch or clean and jerk for my third attempt. For clean and jerk 2, I hadn't power cleaned I couldn't begin to tell you when's the last time I practiced doing a power clean. So, and this goes, there's so many things here to this, this goes to about being present. So clean and jerks, I open up. I just was switching over to just doing power jerks. So I wasn't moving my feet. And I opened up with 120. In the back, I'm doing cleans and everything. But as the weight started getting heavier, I started just for whatever reason catching a little bit higher. I open a 120 and I just power clean the thing like nothing. It just flies up. Wasn't intending to, and this is what I was getting at saying a second, is that also the how present I was. So when I watched the video, it looks like bar goes off the floor, right up, one instant. I remember when I was pulling it, in the instance of me pulling it, feeling how the bar was and being, oh, this feels kind of light. I should just keep going. And I had like a full dialogue in my head while this was happening. But you watch the video, and there's only maybe a fraction of a second. It's like, wow, that's amazing how the body works in that sense. But again, not to digress, then I ended up going up to 130 and power cleaning 130. And it's just like, man, you have a lot extra from the competition nerves in there. I didn't intend to do that. It just kind of kept going. And it was cool to do.
That's funny how it's like you have a full conversation in like a split second of what things feel like. Talk about self-awareness.
Yeah. And that's like, I'll go back and watch the video, and it's just like, man, I can't believe, like, literally is this like checking thing through my head. This feels light. I'm keep going out. I'm right, all right, let me just keep going for it. And it was a whole dialogue. And it's just like, wow, it's amazing. So when you're really focused and tuned in, it's amazing what the mind and body can achieve.
Yeah. It always is still just a fun shock to me of like, you hear that, how it's like such a quick just thought in your mind, but it's a whole dialogue in your mind of how does this feel? Like I've done that with different challenges and tests before too. It's like all of a sudden you just get the grip and it's like, oh wow, this is like a lot lighter than I thought. It's like, oh shit. Or God forbid, the other flip side of the coin, it's like, holy crap, this is really heavy. Like I better grind this out.
Yeah, that happened before too. Oh God, how's this going to go through? But sometimes it happens. You stay committed to it, and all of a sudden it happens. But you blow your groin out, and a couple issues later, but you made it. That's what matters.
Yeah, no doubt. So, well, dude, Danny, this time has just flown by with you, man. It's been a blast chatting with you and connecting with you. I love the work that you're doing with New York Weightlifting Academy, and I really appreciate the time today. This has been awesome.
Man, I can't believe it already. Mike, I appreciate everything. Glad to be on. I mean, again, definitely a shout out to Eddie Mack for setting everything up on this. So we'll have to do it again. This was awesome. I'm sure there's so much more we could go over and discuss.
I was just going to say that. I was like, I feel like we got to like 2 things of like the 10 that I wanted to go over today. So we'll have to set up part 2 and keep this rolling. So really appreciate you taking the time. If people want to check more of your workout and your content, what's the best place that they can go and check you out?
I'd say probably Instagram's the best. We have the most stuff up on there. Just you can just search New York Weightlifting Academy or NY_weightlifting_academy. Facebook, same thing. What else? We've got a YouTube page. You can check it out on YouTube. All the same name. It'll come up pretty readily. And the website is just the website. It's good. It's got great pictures and stuff on there. So
awesome. Danny, you're awesome, man. Really appreciate it. Listeners, thank you so much for connecting. If you want to follow Danny, you know where to do so, and I'll catch you on the next one. Bye, guys. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you found some great value here. And if you like this episode, please drop a comment and leave us a 5-star rating and review. It does more to build the show than you can imagine. And do not forget to check out and join the Strength Connection Facebook group. In this group, I share the biggest takeaways and lessons from these amazing conversations, as well as training and strength tips for pursuing mastery and fulfillment in life. This group is filled with individuals looking to take full control over their strength, and it's the perfect space to explore new ideas and to share your journey. And you'll also get exclusive access to these Strength Connection Mastery seminars. It's a deep dive into the physical, mental, and spiritual training that you can begin using immediately. So do not wait, go now. Seriously, go. All right, much love to you. Thank you so much, and I'll catch you on the next one.